action are worded negatively as abstaining from this and that, but a little reflection would show that positive psychological factors of great power go along with these abstinences. The abstinences are required as the minimal observance, and it is that which comes directly under the control of the faculties of speech and bodily action. But while these outward principles of abstinence are being observed, at the same time, wholesome attitudes of mind are also being cultivated. And that is how the observance of the principles of abstinence brings about a gradual purification of the mind. The observance of each one of these precepts implies a commitment to some positive mental quality, to a virtue, a habit of the practical intellect. That is, abstaining from taking of life, for example, implies a commitment to compassion, to respecting the right of other beings to life. The precept of abstaining from stealing, taking what is not given, involves a commitment to honesty, to being honest in one's relations with others, and also a commitment to respect the right of others to the possession of their own belongings. The principle of abstaining from false speech implies a commitment to truth, to maintain the truth no matter how difficult it might be to ourselves. And so on for each one of these negatively worded abstinences. If we reflect, we can find a positive virtue in the mind that has to be cultivated simultaneously. Now, the fifth factor of the path is right livelihood. The Buddha teaches that the disciple should avoid any occupation or job that causes harm and suffering to other living beings, or any kind of work that leads to one's own inner deterioration. Instead, the disciple should earn his or her living in an honest, harmless, and peaceful way. And to give a more specific idea of what right livelihood involves, the Buddha mentions 5 occupations that a disciple should avoid. These are, first, dealing in flesh, in meat, as a butcher. Second, dealing in poisons. Third, dealing in weapons or arms. Fourth, dealing in slave trade and prostitution. And fifth, dealing in intoxicants, in liquors and drugs. And the Buddha also says that his followers should avoid deceitfulness, hypocrisy, high-pressure salesmanship, usury, and trickery, or any kind of dishonest method in acquiring their means of support. Now, these 3 factors that we've just discussed, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, these deal with the outer conduct of life. When we come to the next 3 factors, the 6th, 7th, and 8th factors, then we're concerned with the inner work, with the training of the mind. The Buddha begins the mind training with right effort, samma vayama. This factor the Buddha places a special stress on for the reason that the practice of the path requires work. It calls for energy and exertion. The Buddha is not a savior. The means to deliverance he gives in the path. And we can't expect to get anywhere along the path without making the effort. The Buddha says that the Tathagatas, the enlightened ones, point out the path. You yourselves must make the effort. The goal, the Buddha says, is for the energetic person, not for the lazy one. And here we come to the great optimism of Buddhism, the optimism which, in my view, refutes all the charges of pessimism. The Buddha says that through right effort, through right exertion, through the right application of energy, it's possible to change and transform the whole structure of our lives. We're not the hopeless victim of our past conditioning. We're not the victim of our genes, of environment, of our upbringing, and so on. But through training, through practice and exercise, it's possible to raise the mind up to entirely new levels, to lift it up from the swamp of ignorance and self-centered desire, to bring it to the high plateaus of wisdom, enlightenment, and liberation. It all takes work. All it takes is exercise and effort. Practice that has to be built up day by day, month by month, year by year, even lifetime by lifetime. But with this practice, we can lift the mind up to the highest levels of spiritual attainment. And therefore the Buddha urges his disciples to strive on with the firm determination. Whatever has not been attained, that I will attain. What hasn't been achieved, that I will achieve. What hasn't been realized, that I will realize. Then, having stirred up the will, we have to know the right way to apply our effort. Now, the Buddha indicates that right effort can be broken down into 4 aspects. Firstly, if we observe the states that arise in the mind, we see that they fall into 2 basic types: unwholesome states and wholesome states. The unwholesome states are the states of mind rooted in the defilements, in greed, hatred, delusion, and in their offshoots. The wholesome side consists of the virtuous qualities, the qualities that should be developed and cultivated, like the 8 factors of the Noble Path, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 7 factors of enlightenment, and so on. These are the pure, noble qualities that lead to spiritual progress and to ultimate liberation. Thus we have at the opposite sides of the mind the unwholesome states and the wholesome ones. And with regard to each of these, there are 2 tasks we have to perform. First, with regard to the unwholesome side, we have to make the effort to prevent the unarisen, unwholesome states from arising. The unwholesome states are not always present in the mind. At times,